Hey.
How is that? If you want to win something, you go there and give you a ticket.
Oh, I want to win some.
Yeah, sign in.
Sign in?
We're gonna write on that in.
Where'd your mama go? That's a
In the middle. I don't know which direction.
Grab a booth right over there. Just grab it.
But she's got tickets. Tell her how many you
I'm not no ma'am.
There she is, Paya.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Keep up the good work.
Check, 1, 2. That sounds good. Yeah. Check, 1, 2.
Welcome everyone, just take your seats.
There you go.
Your drink is also included in whatever it is you order. Go through the self-care seafood. Let's say a little something else. Okay, that's good. That's good.
I've got a front seat except for the bottom.
How you doing?
Everybody can sit down.
And Mark, we're gonna do the tickets.
Okay. Folks, you can order from the menu, and whatever you order, your coffee or tea will come with it for addition. So that's the deal.
Okay.
Okay? Seat wherever you like. Take your seats. Whatever, we'll get started in a moment.
Love your shirt. Where'd you find that at?
Hang in there, please. So maybe you're going
No way. I love that. I need one like that.
you are.
Sid? Thank you, but they have a place for
Oh, they, okay. Hey man, how you doing? Good to see you. Look at that. Take it out. Yeah. I wonder if they got the coconut shrimp by itself somewhere. Are you with us in the store?
I am, yes sir, Walter Smith.
What are you?
Once again,
Yes sir.
whatever you order from the menu, your tea and coffee comes with it at no additional charge. Sit wherever you like, and we'll get started in just a moment if everybody gets in the
Y'all gonna smell
door.
pretty, right? Gonna smell pretty?
No.
I told her I'd walk by her and said, you got a good seat, you're gonna get bumped, and I just realized y'all are on TV.
Those who aren't here, I guess we're just overcome by the sequester. Maybe that's it. What do you think?
How are y'all doing?
I mean, after all, the world's going to end. The world's going to end.
You got a great little one that's coming out. Do you have a family pack?
Yeah. We got several folks here that are elected people, including certainly Jeff Duncan. Info. That's what I need. Info. Okay. Well, okay. That's good. I appreciate that. Councilman Eddie Moore, Councilperson Cindy Wilson, Councilman Tom Allen is here. Rick Acton is here with Jeff Duncan. Susan Aiken is here representing Senator Tim Scott. By the way, we're working on Senator Scott for the month of May. That'll be a hoot. In fact, I've only met him once. Nobody else has met him at all, I don't believe. But he seems to be a pretty nice fellow. He's got a good voting record, and that's what's important. Auditor Jackie Hunter's here. He says he'll meet you at the door and just write him a check. Well, not today. Wait till Monday. No matter what this like. Thank you for this. Yes, sir. Glad you came. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to do it. We're going to do another one here. In fact, we haven't got all the stuff together yet. We haven't got all the candy yet. Well, that stuff's all great. Like everything else. Look, the sweet tooth people, we're hurting. Oh, you go to the DT, so you don't have any trouble.
What is your opinion of things that we can move fast, but I mean, we need to get this moving, you know?
I think so. I mean,
Lee's
he's
right.
committed.
Well, he committed to be here. I haven't seen him yet.
What's his name?
Lee's right.
I know. I talked to him on the radio the other day, and I was pleased with his life.
Oh, yeah. His voting where he's more conservative than Kevin Bryan.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I like Kevin overall. I supported him quite a bit.
Yeah.
So good deal.
And he's got the voting record to prove it.
All right. Well, let's work hard. And the thing is, we got to get out there and work hard. I mean, I don't know what I can do, but I want to help. I don't know what to do.
We'll put the word out. Oh, there he is. How are you?
I gotta sit over here because I gotta get out.
We've got some publications for you, folks. We're going to be giving those away. Make sure you register too, by the way, or you won't have an opportunity to get some of these goodies up here. We're going to be giving those away. But at some point, you go and get your order in. Keep in mind, tea and coffee comes with it, whatever it is you order from the menu. You haven't registered, make sure you do that. You got to have a ticket. And we'll give away some stuff. Listen, we ain't got no government deal. Yeah, I appreciate it. You want to say something?
I do.
You sure?
I'm popular. I don't need a mic.
Yeah, you do.
No, I don't.
Yeah, you do. Here.
Hello? Hello? Hey, how everybody doing? Hello? Hey! Hello?
I know.
How
She
y'all
wants you
doing
to
today?
listen to her.
Excuse me?
I'm over right here with my bag. Hey, wait a minute.
Hey!
Yeah.
Y'all, no.
Yeah, you can't holler that loud.
Yes, I can. I got a husband, honey.
Oh, that's bad. That's bad.
Dana's somewhere. Dana?
Dana, where's Dana?
I'm Jackie. That's Dana. We're going to be taking care of y'all. If y'all please do us one favor. We ain't going to ask for much.
Liver, big tip.
Outside of that, if you like sit where you're going to sit so we can start getting the drink order and your food order, it'll make it easier for us and then we can get out y'all's way, okay? All right?
Yeah.
Okay. Dana and Jackie. Okay? Thank y'all.
You're going to take care of it. They're going to be about to visit all these rings. Okay? So sit still until they get your drink order, I guess is what she's telling everybody. Yeah. That only became other people here I haven't seen before. Congressman Duncan is milling around a little bit. I don't know where he's back here in the back now. He'll say a few words as soon as we get most of the folks in the front door. We're still waiting on people to get seated. So again, take your seats and place your drink order and sit still. You've heard me talking about Anderson coins and collectibles before, the gold and silver, junk silver and all that. Well, here's the man involved in Anderson coins and collectibles. I don't think he got anything in his pocket though. I checked it when he came in. So if you need something, you can talk to him here or wait till Tuesday. Really? That's probably Keep in mind that your order does include whatever you want as far as tea or coffee and additions. We got one of Anderson's finest that walked in. Dan Harvell is here with the County Republican Party and they're soliciting membership. I haven't seen Lee Wright yet, unless he snuck in and I didn't see it. He's still over in Spartanburg. How many of you got snow this morning early? Everybody? Well,
Hey, hi, Dan.
Tim Hills who wants some of this stick.
Doesn't bother me.
Well, I'll be gone. Understanded and
He needs to say he's loser.
Shame this one.
We're going to have our hands full if he does all at once.
Yeah, but the hand of one is the hand of all. Need to pass that around, let people. That's terrible. Terrible.
But it's unbelievable, you know, the age group in here is on the side.
Susan Lincoln is here as well. Susan's representing Senator Tim Scott officially now. Every other one is so I guess we're going to be.
So he did it. You know, I was totally hands off. I never talked. People asked me about it. I said, I can't talk to you about it. I have to be
I wish you could say call Leslie White.
Billy thinks that I'm.
Little update here, folks. I just got word that Representative Ann Thayer is out of the hospital, and she is in some rehabilitative state at this point for 6 to 8 weeks. So she is on the mend, and that's good news. There for a time it was iffy, unfortunately. But now I think things are all right, and that's good to hear. Good to hear. Representative Thayer's doing much better than she was. You got one cooking back there. Just for you. Well, we got a pretty good crowd today. It's going to take a few minutes to get everybody served as far as drinks and your food order and all that, but we'll get underway here in a moment. Make sure that you have a ticket. We're going to be giving away some pretty nice prizes a little later on this morning. We'll try to wrap things up as quickly as we can, and Congressman Duncan will be saying a few words, and we'll recognize all the other folks that are here. I think everybody's pretty much got their seats and are here. No, you still got a couple that haven't taken their seats yet. Are we running out?
I think there were 2 precincts.
See, the thing was, he spent the whole summer.
Door to door.
Boy, I tell you.
See if I gaze around the room here and see what we have. By the way, all of you that don't know the radio wrong, I'm sitting over here. If you're looking at me while I stand up on my right. On the right, over here. You can't stand up, but maybe I can point at it. Over here. Those who have been quiet. Yeah. We'll let the radio have to say a word too. But only a word.
Hey, Rick. How are you?
Don't say something.
Hey, how are you?
I just want to say good morning to all of you. Glad you're here. If I'd known all you people were coming, I wouldn't have made the trip. I was afraid Rick and the congressman would be here by themselves with that little snow we had earlier. But anyway, it's good to see all of you. And those that call in a lot that we never know, you're not as known as everybody calls me their uncle and everything else. Tell us who you are. Come by. Say, I call in, or so we'll know we're not listening to. So thanks a lot.
All right, there you have it. Words of wisdom. You know, you never know what to expect when you're dealing with live radio, especially from radio. You don't ever know. Don't ever know. Everybody got a ticket already?
Yep.
Okay. Let me first recognize some folks that are here that are should be well known. If not, they will be. Councilman, I'm going to go all the way around this way, for my right to the left. Councilman Eddie Moore is here. Eddie's over there talking to people. Eddie, raise your hand, let everybody know who you are in case they don't. And Dan Harvell is here with the Republican Party. Recognized him earlier. He's going to say a word or two about the reorganization for a moment, and we'll continue on.
Okay, hello everyone. I want to thank everybody that has any sort of participation in the Anderson County Republican Party. We do have a vibrant, a very conservative Republican Party here in Anderson County, probably one of the absolute most conservative county parties in the state, and I appreciate each and every one of you that have helped us out, that worked during the election cycle, and we invite you. Our meetings are every third Monday night of the month, every third Monday night at Concord Community Church, which is used to be in the old days. It was a Christian school. It's out on Concord Road, just before you get to Grayland subdivision on the left. It's directly across from Smithbrook subdivision that's right across the road from it. Anyway, we meet there at 6:30. We usually feed you a meal. It won't cost you anything. You might want to drop $1 or $2 in the bucket, but anyway, you can come at 6:30 and eat with us, or you can come at 7 o'clock for the regular meeting. We will not be meeting there for the next 2 months because of first in March is precinct reorganization. This is very, very, very important to our local Republican Party. We need participation in every precinct in the county, and of course you need to go there, elect your officers for the precinct, and of course that gives that particular precinct a vote on the executive committee of the county. All right, that will be March 18th. The reorganization meetings will be done in a regional fashion, which we have done for the last 2 times, which means that we group anywhere from about 3 to perhaps 8 precincts into regional locations where you will meet. And there you have your own individual precinct meeting amongst those from your precinct. Real quickly, I want to announce where you will go. Now, this is March the 18th, the third Monday in March, and it is at 6:30. Okay, in the Powdersville region, it will be Wren High School cafeteria, and these particular precincts will go to Wren High School. It will be Brushy Creek, Concrete, Hunt Meadows, Piedmont, Piercetown, Powdersville, Mount Airy, Simpsonville, 3 and 20, and White Plains. Now the Anderson region, which is Anderson proper, will be at T.O. Hanna High School. That will be all the city precincts, such as Ward 1, Precinct 1, all the way down to Ward 6, Precinct 2. If you're a W1/P1 or W/P precinct, you will go to T.O. Hanna High School. In addition to that, it's at T.O. Hanna. Of course, this is the largest one. This is the largest gathering, the most precincts in one place. In addition to those city precincts, it'll be Anderson 5A, Anderson 5B, Appleton Equinox, Bowling Green, Broadway, Centerville A, Centerville B, Cox Creek, Edgewood A, Edgewood B, Gluck Mill, Hammond, Hammond Annex, Hopewell, Lakeside, and Varennes. Now in the Townville region, which is the smallest, well, it's not the smallest region, but it has the fewest precincts, which is only 3, you will meet at the Townville Fire Department. And those 3 precincts are Fort 1, Fort 2, and Townville. Only 3 in that one. In the Pendleton region, you will meet at Sandy Springs Water Company. And those precincts will involve Bishop's Branch, Denver, Sandy Springs, Five Forks, Green Pond, LaFrance, Melton, Mount Tabor, and Pendleton. In the Williamston region, you will have Cedar Grove, and Williamston will meet in downtown Williamston at Calvary Baptist Church. And Williamston will be Cedar Grove, Pelzer, West Pelzer, Williamston, and Williamston Mill. The Star Ivor region will meet at the Star Fire Department. Those precincts will include Center Rock, Flat Rock, Grove, Hall, Homeland Park, Ivor, Jackson Mill, Mountain Creek, Rock Mill, Star, and West Savannah. And then the last region is the Belton-Honeypath area, which is at BHP High School. Those precincts will be Barkers Creek, Broadway, Creightonville, High Point, Neels Creek, Belton, Shakola, Friendship, Honeypath, and Rock Springs. So if you're on the email list, you'll be getting this probably tonight. And please come out and participate in that. It's very, very important. It helps our party grow. Helps our party grow. Now, the following month, we will not be meeting at our regular place because that is our biannual county convention, which will be held at TL Hanna High School. That will begin at 6:30. If you go and become a precinct officer or you sign up as a member at the precinct meeting, you can pay $5 and become a delegate to the county convention. That's the way that works. Then at the county convention, you pay a certain fee, which is $5 or $10, I can't remember which now, and then you become a delegate at the state convention, which will be in May. So anyway, please keep those two dates in mind. I'm going to say one thing selfish here before I hand the microphone over. I thank you for letting me represent you as the chairman of the Anderson County Republican Party for the last 2 years, and I am going to ask for your support in re-election. I'm announcing right now that I am going to run for one more term at least for chairman of the party, and I thank you and appreciate your support.
Thanks. How about that? Dan Harvell, chairman of the Republican Party. Okay, we're making it around the room here. I didn't tell you who Rodney Sanders is. He calls in occasionally, known as affectionately the professor. you want to say, oh, yeah, but you can't say that on the radio. Here, Rodney.
Well, I'm a little bit like, I do occasionally have an opinion, but Charles accuses me of knowing it all, and I just keep telling him I don't. I just know more than he does. So you got to understand we've had a long. About everybody in this room. I've been blind about 20 years. Just about everybody I know. I've gotten to know after I was blind. So y'all look alike. Some of you sound different. You sound different in a building like this than you do on the radio. So you tap me on the shoulder. You just tell me who you are. Don't throw anything at me because I can't talk.
I do Sanders. We appreciate his participation. Everybody else too. Okay, Donut Richardson called in yesterday. Donut's a fixture of this area and an icon for years. We were talking about old times and all that stuff and old ventures and whatever. I remember right, Donut? Stand up here. We'll talk about it now. We talked about donuts, didn't we? Yes. How are you? Oh, really? Everybody's got colds these days. We got remedies for that. I just don't have one today. Jimmy Brown, how are you? Jimmy's an electrician, aren't you, Jimmy? How many things have you fixed lately? Oh, really? Well, good to see you here. Glad you came. Charlie Griffin is here as well. I forget his stuff as well. Charlie's wearing his hat. Chrome dome. Needs all the help on a day like today, I want you to know. Usually it works, it was terrible. Rick Freemantle is here too. Of course, if you need electrical stuff, you call Jimmy. And if you need somebody to tear up something, call Rick Freemantle. Yeah, all here at one table. If it don't work out, pop it. But heck, we got plenty of those frivolous things around anyway, don't we? Around this county. Greg Williams is here. All the other folks that I'm seeing, any other elected folks I don't see here on this end anyway. I think they're all down the other end. But I've already got them. Well, let me tell you about this. You heard me talking about from time to time the town crier. Reeves Abney, the publisher of that, is sitting over here in this booth here. Stand up, Reeves, if you would, or just wave your hand. There you go. And if you want a copy, you have several here. This is the March issue. Got a lot of stuff in here, even recipes. They're late as usual. Is your name Harvell? Okay. Make sure you get a ticket before we give away this stuff, by the way. Have a little comical column in here too. Little jokes and so forth. For instance, many of us here, I can see, can relate to this particular story. I feel like my body's gotten totally out of shape. So I got my doctor's permission to join the fitness club and start exercising. Decided to take on an aerobics class for seniors. Bent, twisted, gyrated, jumped up and down, perspired for about an hour. By the time I got my leotard on, the class was over. That's it here. If you want a copy, Reeves has it over here. And I'm sure he would be glad to give you one as long as supplies last. He will take up about 25 or so, right? So we better do it quick. Interesting. A lot of interesting trivia information in there as well. Okay. As we move around the room here. Glad to see all of you here. Dick and Leslie White here. Jared Baker's here. Haven't seen you in a while. You haven't grown any hair.
That's why you haven't seen me.
Jonathan Hill is here with his tea party. Jonathan, any tea, by the way?
Any tea? I didn't bring any with me.
He's
going to order something.
That's right. That's right. And who else do we have that I haven't recognized as of yet? I've already mentioned Tom Allen is here. Now, if you want to chew Tom out, he's sitting right over here. He will be. And Jackie Hunter is here. Wave your hand there, Tom, and let everybody know where you are. Thanks. And Jackie Hunter, the auditor, is here. And of course, again, just wait till Monday on the checks. Cindy Wilson is here. Councilperson Cindy Wilson is here if you'd like to chat with her when we mill around a little later on today. And Congressman, of course, Jeff Duncan is here. Rick Atkins and the other entourage is here, part of it. And we're going to turn the thing over to Congressman Duncan if you come on up here. He's not in a tie. Thank you. You got to slum every now and then, you know. We all do that. I hope I didn't forget anybody or didn't recognize anyone. It was an oversight if so. We have to get the congressman up here in the front area because of the feedback of the microphone and so forth and so on. But Congressman Jeff Duncan, representing our area, a very broad area as well, and he's done a fine job, and I do need to talk to you privately about being some part of it. But you had to do what you had to do. You would welcome Congressman Jeff Duncan.
Thank you. I got a mic on. Thank you. And, thank y'all for being here. I'm going to do my best to make sure that this backward can hear me as well as those by the speaker. Because I'm a little hard of hearing, so I understand sometimes. So if you can't hear me, just ask me. I'll speak up or I'll direct it that way as well. But thanks for having me.
And I'm going to do a little commercial since Rick did. Guy Mobley's here, and I was an auctioneer for 16 years. And Guy bought a bunch of equipment from me.
Yeah, he is.
He's got an auction on March 14th, restaurant equipment at his place out on, that's on Highway 187. So I'm going to give him a little commercial. And you go and hear, hey, now what do you get for it? $25, $35, $45, $55. He can do it better than I can, but I appreciate him. He bought a lot of equipment from my auction company over the years. Guys, I'm as frustrated as you are about what's going on in our government. So let's just start off and just ask, does anyone here not think we have a spending problem? If you don't think the nation has a spending problem, raise your hand. Well, Nancy Pelosi doesn't think we have a spending problem. Apparently, the president doesn't think we have a spending problem. But we got some good news. Sequestration went into effect last night. The sky didn't fall. The airports were still running. And then we saw the president, he traveled 5,660 miles. 5,660 miles to run around the country to bash House Republicans over sequestration when it was his idea. It was the White House's idea as part of the debt ceiling deal to try to force the super committee to find the targeted cuts. And that's what we wanted. We wanted to see the targeted cuts as well. But, say hey to the professor here. But you know what? We had $85 billion in spending cuts that went into effect last night. And since I've been in Congress for 2 years and a couple of months, it's the first time that we had spending cuts to the budget or to the spending in government. The first time in 2 years. Now the House Republican Pledge to America said we were going to cut $100 billion out of spending in the first year. We failed to do that in H.R. 1 when they defeated most of the amendments that the freshman guys that came in 2010 put in to cut the budget. And remember, it got to $100 billion in cuts, but that was on paper, stretched out over 10 years, and it was Washington semantics to try to say that we had $100 billion in cuts, when really, after all the dust settled, it was about $35 million in cuts, if I remember correctly. So we had $85 billion in cuts last night, 2.4% of the nation's budget for our spending. 2.4%. And so you can argue that government's growing at a larger rate than 2.4%, and this was just a cut to government growth. And I make that argument as well. But I think it was the right thing to do. Cutting government spending at this point is definitely the right thing to do. The president wants a balanced approach. He wants to see us raise taxes to offset deficit spending, but he wants to continue spending the way they have. And many folks would say they're spending like a drunken sailor, but eventually the drunken sailor runs out of money as well. But the government doesn't. They continue to borrow money at the rate that is really disturbing to me. We're borrowing about 50, I'm not going to use that number. We're borrowing about 43 cents of every dollar that we spend now is borrowed. Because we did have the fiscal cliff, so that dropped it down from where it was approaching 50 cents of every dollar. It's now down a little bit because we raised taxes on folks making $400,000 or more. I voted against that as well. Because I don't believe in a downturn economy, and I don't believe you ought to raise taxes anyway. I believe we're overtaxed as America. We didn't get in this position because we undertax Americans. We're in this position because we spend too much doggone money. Right. And we've got to address government spending. And that's one thing I feel like I went to Washington to do. So sequestration, what's it mean? 2.4% across the board cut. And it was the president's plan. I tweeted something out the other day. I said, you know, if we could find the birth certificate of the sequestration, we would see that it was hatched or born in the White House. The plan was the White House's plan. And so instead of beating us up, and instead of Republicans listening to the president out on the campaign trail, in the last Congress, the 112th Congress, we passed 2 pieces of legislation to replace the sequester. Not to replace it in the number, to keep the number at $85 million in cuts, but just replace where those cuts would come from. Because we believe that you ought to make targeted cuts. As a state legislator, I never like across-the-board cuts. I like to make smarter, targeted cuts. And I think Republicans, for the most part, believe that. And so we passed 2 pieces of legislation that would make targeted cuts. And it will also, one of those pieces of legislation required the president to put a plan together on how he was going to implement the sequestration, how he was going to implement those cuts. But yet they didn't pass the United States Senate, along with a heck of a lot of other bills we passed in the last Congress, over to the United States Senate to deal with American energy independence, to open up offshore areas, to open up onshore areas, and start developing our nation's resources so that our price at the pump would be less, so we'd be less dependent on the Strait of Hormuz and events around the world, and we would be more energy independent. But yet we saw the president continue to thwart offshore drilling with a moratorium and a de facto moratorium and slow-walking drilling permits. We saw the president deny, the White House and the administration deny the Keystone pipeline permit. But we just found out today that the State Department's environmental review of the Keystone pipeline said we don't find any problem with the Keystone pipeline, and so we may be over our hurdle, at least an argument hurdle, with the administration over the environmental impact of the Keystone pipeline. I am all for bringing that friendly Canadian oil down to meet the capacity that we have in our refineries here in this country. We've got guys sitting around idle. We've got refineries running at a percentage of their full capacity. They've got the ability to refine that Canadian oil into the products that we can use. And it's more than just gasoline, it's diesel fuel, it's plastic. It's, the president talks about infrastructure. We've heard a lot of that in the State of the Union speech. We've heard a lot of that on the campaign trail about infrastructure. But what he fails to realize is that there is a glove-in-hand marriage between energy production and infrastructure, not because you're running out on the roads with driving on the gasoline or the diesel fuel. One of the products that comes out of refining capacity when you put a hydrocarbon under immense pressure, it separates. There's some engineers in here that can tell you a lot more than I can about that, but it separates into a lot of products, one of which is butane, one of which is what becomes gasoline, one of which is diesel fuel, and one of which is asphalt. Asphalt. So the president wants to work on the infrastructure needs of our country. One of the products is asphalt that comes from a hydrocarbon that's drilled from the earth and produced from what God gave us, and that's a glove-in-hand fit between energy production and infrastructure repairs and production. The other component, if you remember, as I do, and I know a lot of folks from Anderson County and Oconee and Pickens County did, when they poured new concrete, redid the interstate on 385 from about the Clinton exit all the way up to just about Graycourt. And I was campaigning during that time and serving in the state legislature, and I rode that road a lot, and I had a detour from August until about February. There's 10 inches of concrete out there for about, I don't know how many miles that is. Jan, would you say about 18 miles, something like that, from Clinton up to Graycourt? Well, in that concrete, it's a product of energy. The fly ash that goes into concrete production that helps make it concrete the fly ash in that concrete came from probably the Sienna or the SCNG facility. And so the reason I kind of deviated off on that is there is a connection, a correlation between energy production and our infrastructure that seems to be missed in that. So we've had sequestration, we've had the president fail to vote, the Senate failed to vote on energy independence issues and failed to vote on sequestration and replacement issues. It's frustrating when you're in the House of Representatives and you're 1/2 of 1/3 of all the governing process. It's hard to govern from just the House of Representatives. And I had hoped that we would take the presidency and we'd take more seats in the Senate, maybe take control of that, and that didn't happen in November. Had it had happened, I think we would have seen things go a little differently. So far, they did not happen. And so we're back to the fact that we lost, I think, 8 seats or so in the House. We're down to 233 Republican members in the House. It only takes 218 to be a majority. Our majority is a little slimmer now. We didn't win the Senate. We didn't win the White House. So how do you govern just doing that? That's part of the frustration. I see us as maybe the last line of defense for our great nation and the liberties we enjoy. We've got to stop the bad policies that are coming out of Washington, in addition to the spending, the erosion of our liberties. And I see us as the last line of defense, but we've got to do some things differently than we did in the last Congress when I was there. See, I was frustrated in the 112th Congress with the way my leadership seemed to be running the show. When we got to H.R. 1 and all of our amendments were defeated. I say all of our amendments, the true conservative, the freshman class that came in, offered over 100 amendments that were defeated to further cut spending in that first spending plan on this continuing resolution. You know, it's been about 1,404 days since the United States Senate's passed a budget for our nation. I carry an iPad right here. 1,404 days ago, this wasn't available. Seems like it's been with me for a lot longer than that. But you couldn't buy this the last time the Senate passed a budget for our nation. So it's been over 1,400 days. Americans know the Senate's supposed to pass a budget by law. Nobody's enforcing that. We continue to go along with business as usual with a continuing resolution, a spending plan for the nation called a CR. If I use Washington speak, I apologize. Continuing resolution is a spending plan that mirrors what the last spending plan was with some adjustments. But it's not a true budget where you actually have to think about what you're spending, each line item, how much it is, increases over last year, where you're going to get the money, and you actually have to plan for the future in a budget. The Senate won't do that. We passed two budgets, known as the Paul Ryan budget and then a Republican budget last year. Basically, look at the spending curve and try to figure out how we can plan to get out of debt and quit deficit spending and get out of debt at some point in time in the future. And so, for the past 2 years, we passed that and the Senate failed to. And then we had some shutdown battles. We had a debt ceiling battle, and I voted no against that. I voted no against a lot of the CRs, but not all of them, because I did see some movement in certain areas in the right direction. But, so we get to the election. We're back to having less seats in the House. We don't have the Senate. We don't have the presidency. So how can we govern and be effective and protect individual and personal liberties and protect our republic from just House representatives? So, this is a question we face going into January, and in December, I lost one of my mentors in the United States Senate with Jim DeMentley, and I'm going to miss it. But now he's on the other side of the fence. He doesn't have all the restraints that you may have as an elected official. And I look for him to take his gloves off or put the boxer mitts on. He's now at Heritage Foundation, which I am glad. That's a group that I score real well with, I seem to align with, and I'm glad Jim's over there. We got Tim Scott replaced him, so we lost a stalwart in the house. My roommate, we share an apartment together. I never see him. He was there this week. I was there this week. I would come home late at night. His light would be on in his bathroom. I'd go in my room, shut my door. I'd get up. I'm an early rouser. I'd get up early in the morning. I would walk out before he left, or his shower would be running as I walked out the door, and vice versa. You know, I never see him, but it was that way when we were in the house together. We never saw each other hardly. Just different schedules. He was on Rules Committee. I was on other committees. Our schedules were different. But he's going to be a great United States Senator. Get to know him. I'm glad Susan Aiken went to work for him, because she's his voice in the upstate. He's from Charleston. He needs to find out what the folks in Anderson County need, what they want, what their opinions are, and they need to understand that Susan is a great voice for Tim Scott, and I'm glad she stayed on. Thank you, Susan.
Congressman Jeff Duncan. Well, if you got a question, you got a moment or so, I'm sure, Congressman.
Yeah.
I got them lined up.
Okay, Charles, let me just finish with one thing real quick.
You got to go right ahead.
In January, so we come in, you lost Jim DeMent over there, lost Tim Scott, we're facing a speaker vote, we're facing the situation of a CR and a debt ceiling vote and a fiscal cliff. You know, everything was piling up right there in January. So that's what we were faced with. And I was with a group, I'll go ahead and answer this, this might be one of your questions, why did you vote for John Boehner? I was with a group of folks that they got together and we talked about not voting for Speaker Boehner for speakership in the 113th Congress. And he knows that, so I'm not saying anything on camera that they don't know. But after much prayer about it, I decided that that wasn't the right thing to do at that point in time, because no one had emerged as a true leader that could lead the Republicans and the Conservatives in the 113th Congress. And so, and I can share a story with you, I'm not going to do that, but the day of the vote, I voted for John Boehner. And here's what I think happened. And here's what I know happened. I don't just think, I know happened. And I'm going to share an analogy with you. If you know the biblical story of David and Saul, when Saul was pursuing David to kill David, David hid out with his men in a cave. And Saul had to go to the bathroom. He entered the cave to relieve himself. And David's men said, look, God has delivered our enemy into our hands, kill him. David withdrew his sword. He crawled up just to do that. He thought better of it. Right before he stuck the knife in him, he cut off a piece of his garment. And Saul finished up, and he left the cave, and David pursued him out of the cave, and he hollered at him. He said, "Saul! Saul!" Saul turned around and saw David standing there with a piece of his garment. He looked down, and his garment had been cut off. And he realized he was in a vulnerable position in that cave doing what he was doing. David got close enough to cut off a piece of his garment. And he held it up and he showed it to him, so that Saul would understand what exactly had transpired, and that Saul had spared his life. I believe that a group of us conservatives showed John Boehner a piece of his garment on that day. And what we have seen is more resolve with John Boehner since the fiscal cliff till now. He was a beat up puppy after Plan D and the fiscal cliff. He was feeling down. And so I have seen that resolve. I put my trust in him, but he knows we got the votes to take him down tomorrow if he steps across that line. And so I say that with the idea that we went into our retreat right after that, the Republican retreat right after that. And several true conservatives that I believe in, Jeb Hensling from Texas and Jim Jordan from Ohio, and Paul Ryan from Wisconsin, and Steve Scalise, who's now the chairman of the Republican Study Committee, the conservative group within the House Republicans, they got together because we were facing a debt ceiling increase early in January. And we were going to have this battle that we went through, and right after that we were going to have sequestration, and then we were going to have a continuing resolution or a spending plan because we're all going to get a budget. It'd been almost, at that point in time, not quite 1,400 days since the Senate passed the budget, but we believe, as conservatives, the right thing to do is for the Senate to pass a budget. We believe that's an integral component. And so they came up with an idea that we hatched at the retreat with our leadership, who really at that point in time didn't have a clue on how to proceed with these items that were coming up, such as sequestration and debt ceiling. And so this idea was hatched, and we now call it either the Williamsburg Compact or the Williamsburg Accord. I kind of like the Williamsburg Compact because I understand the Mayflower Compact, but it was this. Let's put off the debt ceiling fight for a couple of months, because that's going to be a brutal one. Let's put that off, and let's get to where sequestration will go into effect. $85 billion in cuts, automatic. We wouldn't have to do a thing. That is the law. So we didn't have to do anything, and sequestration would happen. And so we need to have a strong hand. As you've seen transpire with the president scrambling around, saying Chicken Little, the sky is falling, we've seen them scrambling because we have a high ground now. That was part of the plan, to let sequestration happen, put off the debt ceiling fight, which we are going to have, I promise you. Get sequestration, which takes discretionary spending, doesn't deal with mandatory spending, it deals with discretionary spending, and that number, out of a $3.8 trillion budget, that number was about $1.047 trillion. I'm going to use the number 1047, that means $1.047 trillion. So discretionary spending was at 1047. With sequestration, that number drops down to $974 billion in discretionary spending. First cut to discretionary spending since I've been there. The largest cut to discretionary spending over 20 years. Keep those numbers in mind. That's why it was the right thing. And so we put the debt ceiling off, we'll have sequestration, and then by March 27th, we've got another CR, because the CR that we voted on back in September, under the guise of Jim DeMint, his plan said we ought to put the CR off until after the election and put it in the first 100 days of the administration, hoping it was going to be a Romney administration and we could deal with the debt ceiling and the CR and all under a new president, but at least get it past the election and not have it dealt with in a lame duck presidency. So that was why March 27th was chosen. And so debt ceiling moved out, got sequestration yesterday, now we're focused on the March 27th date of a continuing resolution, a CR. And we're going to set that. We got a commitment out of our leadership in the Williamsburg Compact to keep that CR set at 974. Discretionary spending is the only thing we deal with in the CR. Keep it at 974. And hold firm on that. I say hold firm even with the government shutdown to make sure that number stays at 974. So we've got a commitment from our leadership for that. So we get a 974 CR. That'll last through the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th. And then we got a budget. I mentioned the budget plan. I failed to mention it as part of this sequencing, but we've got that budget coming out. Part of that deal was to force the Senate to pass a budget for the first time in 1,400 days. By resequencing and pushing the debt ceiling out, it was a no budget, no pay plan. It said if you don't pass a budget, either the House or the Senate, whichever body doesn't pass a budget, they don't get paid until they do. To force the Senate to pass a budget. Now, why is that important? We all understand that budgeting is an important thing for a government to do. We have to do it in our homes, businesses have to do it, but government needs to do it as well. But what we're going to see happen on the Senate side during their budget process is this, I believe. We're going to see them include tax increases in their budget, and we're also going to see them fight for their liberal spending priorities. They're going to have to stand on the United States Senate floor and debate for the first time in 1,400-something days budgeting priorities. And so if we expose a Kay Hagan or a Joe Manchin or some of these other senators that are up for re-election in 2014, if we expose them for who they are, liberal spenders who want to see tax increases as part of the budget deal, that gives us a glimmer of hope that we can retake the Senate in 2014. I go back to the fact that we're 1/2 of 1/3 of all the government. The presidency, the judiciary, and the legislative branch, and we're half of that. It's hard to govern from there. But if we take the Senate back, then it's 2-1 against the president. I'll take those odds any day. Okay? So 2-1. So we're going to pass a budget, and Paul Ryan says he's going to set the level of spending in his budget at $974. It's discretionary. But he's also going to work on the mandatory spending with a 10-year path to balance. To try to get to a balanced budget within 10 years. Now, we didn't get here overnight. If I had my druthers make me king for a day, we'd get to a balanced budget a heck of a lot quicker than 10 years. But I understand that we need to have a glide slope into this and phase out and make some changes to the entitlements and other things in order to hit a point where we have a balanced budget. And so having that plan and not raising taxes as part of that is important. We've got a commitment as part of that Williamsburg Compact to have a balanced budget as well. And it puts the Senate in a very, very awkward position for once in 1,400 days to have to pass a budget. I think that's a good thing for our country to have an opportunity to take back the Senate, because we're not going to have the White House opportunity for 4 more years. So we do that. We get a budget done. The Senate passes the budget by the deadline, or if they don't, then they're under the microscope for not passing the budget again. They don't get paid. You see how that thing's going. So we get past all that, and then we get into another debt ceiling fight, which we're going to have in July or August. It's going to be a repeat of the summer of 2011, where we're going to have a debt ceiling fight, and it's going to be a lot different debt ceiling fight than you saw back in 2011. You're not going to see a sequestration or super committee plan. You're going to see a real effort, I believe, to cut spending and end this. Maybe go for $1 of spending cuts for every $1 of debt ceiling increase. Which, if you do the math on a $1 for $1 cut for debt ceiling increase, you eventually get out of deficit spending. You get away from the need to borrow money, and we start on a path to a balanced budget just in that plan. It's called the Boehner Plan, $1 for $1. And I played with the numbers, and Mick Mulvaney, who I believe in as well as an economic guru, he's played with the numbers. And you eventually get out of the need to borrow money in a shorter period of time than even the 10 years, and it works out. So we're going to have that fight. I haven't really wrapped my mind around that debt ceiling fight yet, because I've been on some of this other stuff. But I'm figuring out I don't want to raise the debt ceiling. I want to try to work with my colleagues to craft a plan for that summer strategy on the debt ceiling that represents y'all. That represents what you would have us do, applying common sense to where we are and understanding the situation of we're 1/2 of the governing structure in the legislative branch, and see where we can come out in a winning position. Because we've got to continue maintaining the beginnings. And so I'm going to end on one other thing, and then I'm going to stop and answer questions. I'm going to get away from spending for just a minute. I'm going to talk about my conversation with leadership and what I saw happen this week, and my conversation with leadership last night at about 7:30. And that was VAWA. We, in the 112th Congress, I was upset the way they brought bills to the floor, the process. I felt like we needed to bring Republican bills to the floor, only vote for Republican bills, send those to the Senate. We're in the majority. We get 218 Republican votes, send a Republican flavored or Republican stamped bill over to the Senate, let them change it, send it back. Regular order works, because it exposes them, it doesn't inoculate the Senate, it exposes them for what they are, and we have 2 versions, we work it out. That's the right process, the one our founders set up, and that's what I've been advocating for. But what we saw happen this week with VAWA, which is the Violence Against Women Act, It's a misnomer. I don't like violence against women. I didn't like the act, and I don't like that. I supported strong CDV laws, criminal domestic violence laws, here in South Carolina. When I was a state legislator, we strengthened the criminal domestic violence laws in the state capitol, in the state legislature. And you know what? That's where it's supposed to happen. The federal government doesn't have any role in criminal domestic violence because it's a state and local issue. It's prosecuted as a state issue. It's a state general assembly issue. And why in the world are we voting for that in the United States Congress when we got a lot more pressing issues that are constitutional issues to deal with? And so the bill they brought up to the floor was the Senate bill, a bill that passed the Senate. And I sent Kevin McCarthy a text on, I guess it was Wednesday night. I said, why in the heck? I probably said something different. Would we bring a Senate bill to the floor when for 2 years they failed to bring any of our legislation that we passed out of the House to the floor of the Senate for the vote? Why in the world will we do that?
Yeah.
And he sent a text back and he said he was angry about it. Which is the first time I've seen Kevin McCarthy, who is our whip. He's responsible for counting votes. He doesn't necessarily bring the bills to the floor himself. That's directed by the majority leader's office. He said, I'm angry, Jeff, over this whole process. That kind of caught me off guard. And so I talked to him the next day. And he was basically in a position where he had to do that. So they brought that bill to the floor with the idea that we'll bring the Senate bill up and then we'll write a rule, or that's how the process works, but we'll allow the House bill, the House version of Iowa, to be added as a substitute amendment. We do away with the Senate version, be only the House version if that amendment passed. We'll count on the Republicans getting together to vote for the House version and discard the Senate version. Well, the House version has issues too, some of which I mentioned earlier. Why in the world are we doing this anyway? This is a state and local issue. And so what happened was we brought up the House version as an amendment. It was defeated. I voted no because I'm going to vote no all the way on those. But it was defeated. Guess what happened? The House Democrats, go watch the C-SPAN video. They're cheering that the House version of Iowa got defeated. And so then we go into the next vote, which is a vote on the Senate version. And it passed. A lot of Republicans voted for it, a lot voted against it, but enough to get 218. I don't know what the final numbers were, but the Senate version passed. Guess what happened? House Democrats cheering, high-fiving, cheering. It shouldn't be that way when the Republicans control the House of Representatives. It should not be that way. We passed a Senate bill without a House amendment this week in a Republican-controlled House of Representatives. And I'm disappointed. So I sent Kevin McCarthy a text last night, and because I'm concerned. And my text read this. I want to read it to you because I don't want to tell you wrong, but I said, please tell me that we're not going to pull a move like VAWA with any Senate-passed gun legislation.
Oh.
He said, no way. Then he called me because he's concerned with the process as well. And I said, Kevin, I talked with Eric Cannon, the majority leader, back in January when Dianne Feinstein was talking about her bill. And I said, please tell me, Eric, that we're not going to bring any gun legislation to the floor. And he said, Jeff, there will be no gun legislation brought to the House floor while I'm majority leader. I said, okay, I got your word on it. And we talked about mental health issues, and I probably will see some mental health bills come to the floor dealing with that, but I don't know yet. But I've got his word. Kevin was concerned as well. But I want to make sure. I'm going to stay on top of this issue because I've got the majority leader's word, I've got the whip's concern and word that we're not going to, and I don't want to see a bill that deals with gun legislation. Here's what I don't want to see happen. They bring the Senate bill to the floor, they pass out of the Senate, it's Dianne Feinstein's restricted gun legislation. They bring it to the floor hoping that a House replacement bill will be offered. It'll be defeated like we saw with VAWA, and then we get a vote on the Senate gun legislation that restricts our Second Amendment rights. That is my fear. That's why I share that with you. That's why I share the whole VAWA story with you, as contentious as it might be. It's because I'm scared that we're going to see that process repeat itself. That's why I contacted the whip last night. Because as I chewed on it yesterday, I became more and more alarmed. So, Second Amendment issues. I'm gonna fight for you. I think the 10th Circuit Court did more this week. Did you talk about this on the radio? The 10th Circuit Court did more this week to limit your Second Amendment rights than anything Obama's done with an executive order or anything that Congress has passed yet or I've even seen. Because it says this. It says you don't have the right to have a concealed weapon permit. The Second Amendment doesn't cover your right to have a concealed weapon permit. That's what the 10th Circuit Court said this week. Second Amendment doesn't deal with concealed weapon. I disagree. I mean, the Second Amendment says we have the right to keep and bear, we the people have the right to keep and bear arms, and that right shall not be infringed. And I don't know what part of shall not be infringed they don't understand. So this is going to be a raging battle. I just want you to know I'm a Second Amendment rights activist. It's probably one of the most dear amendments in the Constitution to me. I'm a CWP holder.
Sweet tea, yes.
And I disagree with Governor Cuomo of New York when he said, no one needs a 30-round magazine to kill a deer. Nobody needs an AR-15 to kill a deer. But we're not talking about deer hunting. I got a deer rifle for that. I may want to grab an AR-15 to defend my liberty against tyranny, a tyrannical government, or another country that invades our government. An AR-15 has nothing to do with the right to kill a deer. In fact, I don't see the word hunting in the Constitution. And if I go back and read all of the founders' documents, hunting wasn't mentioned. That was a way of life that you were expected to do to feed for your family. To feed your family. But they did expect you to have the ability to access a firearm to defend this great nation against tyranny from outside or within. That's what the Second Amendment's about. Maybe Governor Cuomo and the guys in Chicago, maybe they need to go back history class. And so I'll just leave it with that and answer any questions.
By the way, Sheriff Jeff came in, and I did not recognize him because Jeff was running his mouth.
We got to end it today.
Well, we appreciate you being with us today.
I was just told I did a Marco Rubio move and got some water there.